Hey guys, welcome back. Well, this is day 2 of the gauge dilemma for the Mach1 restoration here. And I wanted to go over my remedy for bringing in a little bit more accurate gauges than what comes with the actual Mach1 or fastback or whatever you're putting your triple gauges in. This, if anybody's familiar with the Mustang, is the original set of very sought after electronic gauges that goes in the triple stack in the console of the Mach1 dash. And these gauges, while they look very nice and original and really cool, are very old technology. I'm sure they'll serve their purpose if you have the proper sending units, which I do not have. This is how my kit came. It's basically everything you need, with the exception of everything that I don't have that goes to the engine. And rather than get into a 2.5 month long sending unit hunt for sending units for gauges that I find are inferior and don't look as good as they could, I decided that I was going to run with some new custom gauges. And in my video previously, I spoke about these white-face autometer gauges, which I'm going to show you my screw-up. Well, I wouldn't say screw-up, but my revision. Here is the existing backing plate that's behind this faceplate here. And I decided I was going to start to mock this up and see what they look like inside the cluster. Well, without having a bunch of special tools to start engraving into these plastics to get these things to fit perfectly in these back bezels, you can see I really hacked this thing up. This was already damaged. I decided to just chop it up to see where they would sit once the gauge was fully recessed on the bezel. It doesn't look good. They look like crap. These also don't match they don't look anything like these, so they're not going to look original or even match my speedometer for that matter. So this we're going to scrap. Those are going in the cabinet somewhere. I'll return them to Summit. They weren't cheap, but I think they're going to look really good, and you'll see I'm going to show them mounted already after this clip here. But here they are. Here's the VDO gauges, and you'll see that they're the Mach1 style font with the exact same orange needles that come with the originals. You'll see here's your originals. Here's these, so they're very close looking. And I think these look really good. Let me go ahead and unbox them here for anyone that's interested in buying these VDO gauges. I did a lot of research on these gauges and gauge selection for the Mach1. And I decided to run with VDO primarily because they're not made in China. They're made in India, which is cool. Anything to not support everything made in China. So this is kind of what they look like here. This is the tach. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm running with a tachometer, oil pressure, and temperature, which is the gauges that I find most essential that I need inside the car. So here's the tach, really cool looking. I decided to get the one that revs to 6,000 instead of 8,000 just because that Mustang will never rev past 5,000 probably. So this is an appropriate gauge, and here's how it looks like on the back. This little retaining nut here spins, and this is what locks it in on this particular gauge. And it's typical business as usual for a tachometer. Those run into the you get a positive, negative, and one goes into the MSD box. So simple install. Here's the oil gauge. Here, we'll go ahead and pop this baby out. And then I'll explain to you how I decided to mount these in my dash. And this is, of course, preference, so you guys don't have to do this. But here's your oil gauge here. Really nice looking. One thing I want to note, holding the autometer gauges and then holding these VDO gauges, these are about twice the weight, which tells me that they're a lot better quality. And I can see on the back, it's a lot better quality. You'll see everything is just kind of better. These terminals for the lights, everything is set in nicely and clipped in so it can't fly out. Much better quality product in my opinion, just on first look and handling these. You'll see on the sides there's stickers. This is from me mocking it up. They're scratched off, but it's India on all of them. No made in China stickers, which is a bonus. And then here's the water temperature gauge, which comes in a larger box because this already has the sending unit attached to it, just like every other coolant gauge. But there you can see it in there. And this, of course, is better quality. Let me show you why. It doesn't have that stupid copper line with just a little coil around it. This is actual braided line that sends the temperature, and it comes with this rubber gasket or grommet on the top of the sending unit, probably for heat protection. And the sending unit itself is much more heavy duty. So just an all in all, a more heavy duty rig here. And of course it comes with, you can change the lighting on the gauge, green, or red, looks like here, or clear, which is kind of cool. So that's the gauges in a nutshell. Now let me talk about how I decided to go ahead and mount these. This is kind of controversial to the guys in the 71 through 73 Mustang Mach1 world. So not everyone's going to agree with the way I'm going to do this, but I've seen a couple pictures where they'll forego this entire unit completely. Here's the first problem. Let me go back. The holes that are set in the Mach1 cluster, these areas here, are ovals. So you can't just simply drop a circular gauge in an oval hole because the sides are way too narrow. So the reason why people decide to stay with the bezel here is because they can set the circular gauge in the bezel and then still retain the depth that these kind of set here, which is, they're kind of hard to read inside the car if you ask me, but that's just personal preference. So what I decided to do, since I don't have the tools to set up this to hold the new gauges, because it's just way too complicated and you'd need to cut out all of the gray area in here, and then you'd have to find out a way to get them recessed absolutely perfectly, which they're all variable. You'll see the recesses in the gauges back here are completely variable, so you need to build blocks and supports and everything else, and at the end of the day try to figure out how to retain them. It's just a headache waiting to happen, and these go for about 250 bucks on eBay, so you don't want to start destroying and hacking these things up unless, like I showed you before, they're already broken. So that wasn't my plan. So I decided to go ahead and drill out or carve out my existing cluster, which I'll show you here. And this is not complete, but they fit perfectly. Set that down here. I've made these oval hole circles, and everything fits perfectly. There's no air, or there's no light or anything that shows around the gauges when they're recessed in here. So what I basically do, let me pull this oil gauge out to show you. I started by carving with, you're gonna need one of these, a Dremel. I started carving with my Dremel with that sand bit. Basically, just start working your way on the sides more than the tops, because the tops are already, from here to here is already wide enough. You want to start working on here, and you want to start working on in here, and making sure you complete a nice circle by basically just radiusing here and radiusing here, and making sure it's nice and clean. And the finished result is, when you have the hole perfect, they're nice and tight, and bingo, sit right in there like that. And that's exactly the look I was going for. Now, the complaint is on these gauges, there's no sense in sugarcoating any of this stuff. The complaint is, if you run with the conventional gauges, which everyone runs with this autometer shit, which I'm glad I'm not, but you see how fat that black bezel is? And the same goes for the chrome ones. See how fat that is and bulky? The problem is, everyone complains that when they're mounted in the front here, those bezels just stick out way too far and it just looks like it's just out of place. So the other reason I went with these VDOs is the bezels on these VDOs are very, very small. They rise very, very short, and they're almost flush with the glass. So these mounted in the car, it actually looks factory if you look at it. You know, here's your line of view when you're sitting in the car like that. They look factory and they look really cool. So, and they're also not like a gloss black, they're like a matte black, which kind of matches the plastic on the cluster here. So there you go. And now I'll have better instrumentation than just using these typical sweeps where I can't really monitor anything. It's just markings. You don't really know where you're at. You just know you should be in the middle there. The alt gauge would never work anyway because I got a one-wire alternator, and then oil, low, high. I want to know exactly what my oil pressure is. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I decided to do. It's controversial. Some guys may not agree with it. That's fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but that was my workaround. And in the next clip after this, I'll show all of these gauges mounted in here with everything cleaned off, and you can see just how clean it looks. So yeah, guys, VDO gauges, thumbs up. Setting this up to hold these gauges here, definitely going to be awesome when it's all put together. It'll look original, and this will match my speedometer, which is also a bonus. And yeah, if you guys have any questions or anything, pipe them down in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And as always, thanks for watching. Here's the next clip. Okay, here's the finished product with the VDO gauges installed in the Mach1 cluster. And you'll notice, like I mentioned in the previous clip here, these really fit very, very, very clean inside the dash. You'll see as I tilt the camera, you see how the bezels don't look super exaggerated, like, I don't know if you guys have seen some of the other Mach1 clusters, but it doesn't have the really fat bezel lip on it, which keeps it really clean and original looking. Here's the, I'll go ahead and try to stand these up here so you can see. They're not tethered in yet, but there's a good shot of what they'll look like there in the dash. And you know, of course, side profile, they look real clean. Give you a good shot there. My handiwork with the Dremel definitely paid off, and if I can give any guys tips or advice when doing this, is really, really, really take your time, because you'll be happy with the results at the end of the day. These fit in here super snug, and you only have about, I'd say, 3 or 4 millimeters of forgiveness, if that's the word we want to use here, and when you're making your holes wider, because these bezels are very small. They don't stick out much larger than the 2 1/16 inch on the gauge. So take your time when you're doing this, but when you're done, you'll see everything just looks super clean, and it looks like this is how the car came. And these are the closest gauges I can find that resemble the factory gauges here. So that's just a nice look. Here, I kind of got it upside down here, but you can kind of see. That's just a nice look of how they came out here. So if you guys are scratching your head, you got one of these Mach1s, you're trying to figure out how to retrofit some newer style, more accurate gauges in your existing cluster, and you don't want to use the triple tree, which is what those look like. You don't want to use that triple tree bracket. Definitely run with your original Mach1 cluster and spend some time with your Dremel in the garage. It's a labor of love, guys. Thanks for watching.